Aegyptus in Greek means, Egyptian, basically. So for the Lord to bless the land of Egypt, it's like, although it seems like there's like a running away from danger, although that's what it appears as, the Lord in his divine providence, he knows why he did this, okay? So it's recorded even like when the child with the swaddling clothes, entered Egypt, the idols shook, and then, people actually believed in the Lord as God. There was some sort of believers, before St. Mark, but not in an organized way, not as officially an apostolic church, okay? In the verse, out of Egypt I called my son, it's two things. It refers to, you remember when Moses and the whole tribe of Israel was in Egypt, and he called them out from under Pharaoh's yoke, basically. He took them out of there, okay? That's the foreshadowing of the Lord going to Egypt and then said, out of Egypt now I call my son back to Israel, okay? One foreshadows the other. But let's take the main lessons from the Christ child, the God incarnate, the actual what's being foreshadowed. Let's take that lesson. So, really important lesson in life, pick and choose your battles. I'm going to repeat it again. Pick and choose your battles. The Lord could have just used his divine power, sat right in the middle of Bethlehem, and nobody would have been able to touch him. Even with Herod trying to kill all the children and things like that. So maybe we'll read a little bit more. Who's up next? Monica, you want to read? 16 until I tell you stop, I guess.
Then Herod, when he saw that he was received by the wise men, was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all the male children who lived in Bethlehem and in all its districts, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted because they are dead.
Okay. So who can guess with me another child similar in age to the Lord who was probably in that area? I guess he was raised in the deserts. We don't know exactly how this occurred, but who's the kinsman, who's like a relative of the Lord at same age? Right? Somehow he was protected. Maybe, yes. I guess it said that in the Synaxarium, it says that Zacharias was killed between the altar. He was like in that area. So he took the John the Baptist, his child, he placed him on the altar and said the angel took him to the desert, and that's where he was raised. Any way you slice it, God protects his chosen ones. So, the Lord could have just stayed right in the middle of all this weeping and killing and all this stuff, and there's no way his plan would be stopped, okay? He was coming for the salvation of the world. He was born. But what he did was, the Lord himself picked and chose his battles, right? He has the divine authority. He has everything at his disposal. But even just to show his humanity, in front of everybody, he didn't abuse his divine authority, right? And he did flee to Egypt, okay? And then he also did something else. There's like a purpose to it. He knocks down at least 2 birds with 1 stone. What does he do? Obviously avoids the terror of Herod and all this kind of stuff. But what happens to Egypt, if you look at it, right? Egypt it receives a huge blessing, and I can actually, if I was quicker at this, maybe I'll be able to bring it up. Yeah, I can just bring this. This is the map, the path of the Holy Family in Egypt. So they came from Bethlehem, maybe did a loop here, and then there's a nice verse about this monastery. We mentioned a couple times in Synaxarion, Muharrak. Muharrak means it's like burned. For some reason, it's like right in the heart. If you look at the whole picture of Egypt, it's like dead center, and it fulfills that verse. In that day, there will be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt. That's where the Christ child was laid on a stone. Until this day, there's an altar in that monastery. You cannot touch it like it's just a rock. It's one of the very unique altars. It's not like we have the wooden one and all. No, it's the rock where the Christ child was laid on this path to Egypt. And there's even like a story when they tried to do some reconstruction. The guy went to, like change the shape of the altar for some make it like cleaner, and he was paralyzed, right? Like God, when He has a purpose, no one can stop it. Okay, so he did, like I said, he blessed the land of Egypt, and he just avoided, the terror of Herod at that time. Okay, so you got to ask, if the Lord Himself, who has literally everything at His disposal, He's picking and choosing His battles. How about us? Like, why are we? Do we have to get every little, point to go our way? No, we're weak. We're limited. We have to realize, learn from the Lord. Learn from what He did here. Okay, you don't have to try and win every battle. There's a wonderful verse in Ecclesiastes. To everything there's a season, a time for every matter under the heavens. Right? There's a time for war, and there's a time for peace. So there is a time to battle for something, especially for faith. If you see somebody, really degrading the faith, then you say, no, stop. I have something to say here, But if it's not something not so critical, then no, then we can pick and choose our battles in that kind of situation. Another example, this one, thoughts. This is really important, okay? There are many thoughts that if you cut them off from the beginning, it's much easier for you than if you sit there and battle with it, okay? A sin that you committed in the past, for example, let's pretend, okay? It doesn't make sense for you to try to fight against that on your own, and then what do you have? Remembrance of evil entailing death. You remember the sin that you committed, although you confessed it. It's gone, it's done. But what happens? You start fighting with it, negotiating, and all of a sudden you fall into that, at least the thought of that sin again. I'll draw a very, maybe I'll keep my drawing to a minimum here. But this is important for confession, for example. When you confess something, like regarding thoughts, some people are like, oh, I have to confess thoughts. Not necessarily, okay, but potentially. It's like Saint Anthony, I think, gave this example where the birds are swirling over your head. These are the thoughts. The devil's sending random things to you, evil things. So they're not yet building a nest on your head, but you are responsible, and you should, when you commit that step, to commit that sin, is when the bird nests, you accept it, and you engage with it. You enjoy it. Now, okay, hold on. Now I have to say, no, I enjoyed this. I took pleasure in this thought of sin, for example. Okay, pick and choose your battle. Most of the time, you don't fight with that sin. I'd say all the time. You don't have to fight with that sin that you committed in the past. You already confessed. It's done. The Lord's blood wiped it away. When the priest prays the absolution, it's done. It's clear. Just like, the story of St. Moses the Black, the angel erased one by one everything that he blurted out of his mouth, that he spoke out of his mouth regarding the sin. Okay? And easier said than done, right? When an evil thought from the past comes, it's much easier for me to sit here and tell you, yeah, just cut it off and that's it. So the fathers give all these different ways to do it. There's a book called Talking Back, where, if you have a thought about anger, there's verses. The wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Okay? Think of that at that time. There's a whole book dedicated to thoughts against each of the sins. Okay? So you'd answer with a verse. The Jesus prayer, another way. Another one, a bishop, he used to visit us in the monastery. He would tell us, think of anything boring that would just change the subject. Even algebra, just change the subject. Do anything, just change the subject from the sin that's remembrance of evil entailing death. Okay? And at the same time, now he starts going on this path. So let me go back to that, if I can. So he was on this path, and you have the Holy Virgin, with just giving birth to a child and going on this. I took it off the screen. I'm on this long journey through Egypt. His escape was arduous, right? And that shows us the way of righteousness. The devil doesn't just remain silent. He fights against you. He wants to stop the path of righteousness. So you have to prove your steadfastness and cling to him. There's another wonderful verse in the book of Sirach, Jesus bin Sirach. It says, when you come to serve the Lord, prepare yourself to endure trials. Be ready for it. Don't ever get surprised when something kind of comes out of the blue. He does not. Like the devil will not just sit there with his hands folded and, okay, yeah, just keep preaching. No problem, right? That verse is read in monastic tonsure of like the Eastern Orthodox. When you come to serve the Lord, prepare yourself for temptation. Also think of the stories of Job, Joseph the righteous, Moses, Jacob, all these great prophets, these saints, St. Paul, the thorn in his side, right? There's always something from the devil to buffet you, I guess. So be ready for that. It's another lesson to learn from this, the path of the Holy Family in Egypt, okay? And the purpose of these trials is to deepen your relationship with him anyway. It's not just to give you a hard time, okay? Similarly to the Magi, the Holy Family, and specifically Joseph the Righteous, had to be very faithful. He could, like what I was saying about the Magi, when they were told to go another way, right? They could have said, hey, we're coming to see Christ incarnate. Like, why can't he just protect us? Same thing here, the Holy Family. Christ is with them. He's part of the Holy Family. He's the main part of the Holy Family. And still, they're told to, basically run away to Egypt somehow, okay? They didn't, Joseph didn't wonder why we're escaping. And this is probably the hardest part of it, is when you have in your life, when you face some sort of trial, the angel's going to say it here. So we're going to continue reading. Who's going to be next to read? Okay, from 19.
Now when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt,
Yep.
saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother and go to the land of Israel. For those who thought the young child's life are dead.
Okay, let me stop and let me actually go back, because I wanted to actually get to the first part, which Barb probably read for us. This is the important verse, okay? Thank you for reading that, but this is the one I want to focus on. Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there till I bring you word. Uncertainty. Everybody faces uncertainty. Most people face uncertainty in life in some way, shape, or form, okay? That requires that verse to know all things work together for the good to those who love him. Do I really believe that? Right? I got to ask myself. That's when your heart is tested. That's when your faith is tested, right? When there's uncertainty. How long, right? This verse when he says, stay there until I bring you word. Just stay. I'll call you when I have a chance, but stay there till I bring you word. All right? It's indefinite. Then Joseph knew the Lord, he wouldn't leave them. Like I was saying, God is literally in their midst. So you have to trust that God, everything's going to work according to God's will, step by step. So that's the lesson for us. Staring in the eye of uncertainty is probably one of the most difficult things to do in our lives, especially now in family life, let's say. There's other things on the line. It's not just you and God, and that's it, right? You have your family, you have your kids, you have your career, everything's on the line, so it seems like a very tall order to be able to walk by faith in uncertainty, right? It's when other people are on the line. But we still apply the same verse to those different situations, right? God will not give you more than you can handle. All things work together for the good to those who love him, even their families, their kids, their career, whatever. All things, it's still the same verses apply, even when all those things are on the line. All right? I know that's the hardest one, is to know that, like I said, somehow, some way, and this is the hardest one, sometime, the uncertainty of when things will be resolved, it's like, a never-ending problem almost, But we see Joseph, we learn from the Holy Family that he was able to overcome that, okay? And we should learn from that. And then we finally get to the last part, which is look at the effect on Egypt, like down the line. And St. John Chrysostom mentions this. The same country, Egypt, where Pharaoh hardened his heart, right? This is our forefathers. We have to own up to it, right? In his time, in the days of Saint John Chrysostom, he praised all the wonderful monks like Saint Antony and Saint Macarius and all those, and he gave like kind of a good section of his sermon, saying, look at the change that occurred from this hardening of heart to this heart on fire for God. This is the effect of Christ coming into Egypt. Okay, and then he basically was, looking back now, you apply this to your life, right? You have to, we mentioned this before, you have to take up your own faith. You have to do your own work for God. You can't just say, okay, mom and dad are great, and I'm living in the church, I'm doing whatever I can, and, you're living off of the faith of your parents, right? You can't do that. You have to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, okay? So whether your parents are good or they're bad, you have to do your own work. You have to be the true Israel through the way you live, okay? So the way I look at it is, we'll end with like a nice quote from St. Augustine, our beloved St. Augustine. He says about Herod, the miserable tyrant, Herod, he supposed that by the Savior's coming, his birth, that Herod would be thrust from his royal throne. That's what he was worried about, okay? But it was not so. Christ came not to hurt others' dignity, but to bestow his own dignity on others. Okay? I'm going to repeat that last part because it's important. Christ came not to hurt others' dignity, those who are clinging to any position or anything like that, but to bestow his own dignity on others. So it's God's grace that makes us good, whether our ancestors, whether our upbringing, whatever the case may be, is good or bad, right? Our parents can only give us a head start, or they can draw us back a little bit, but in the end, we forge the direction where we're going to go in life. So that's God's grace that makes us have the ability to follow him, to be righteous according to, his will. Okay, and we'll just finish this for the sake of completion. Here. Then he arose, took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. So he comes back. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned by God in a dream, he turned aside into the region of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it may be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets. He shall be called a Nazarene. And glory be unto our God, now unto the ages of ages. Amen. Okay, if you guys have any questions, I tried to make it quick because I wasn't sure how long school was going to be. You can shoot, and then there'll be more of a fun announcement if after any questions, if there are any. Anybody have any questions? Comments, criticisms? Okay, I'll take those too. I'm fishing here. Something? No? Yeah.
What's the physical timeline of all that happening?
Like what happened first and the other? What?
Over a period of time, is he leaving Egypt?
Oh, okay. So, we can probably have to go back to that, but it was like, if you realize, when he went to kill the children in Bethlehem, he killed them up to 2 years. So there is a vague 2-year gap, or 2-year period to play with there. So the Lord was born, right, in Bethlehem. The angels appeared to the shepherds. That all happened instantly. Okay. When the Magi come, they appear to them later on down the line after their travels, right, from an area likely Persia, right, because they received some of the prophecies from a Balaam, right, the same Balaam who his donkey talked to him. I love mentioning that part of the story. But they could have come up to 2 years later, and so this part in Egypt, it actually fits. You have to go to the account in Luke. I don't want to digress too much, but it basically gives you the birth of Christ, then the circumcision, like all that stuff, the presentation into the temple, that's all like right away. 8 days after circumcision, 40 days presentation in the temple, all occurs in Bethlehem. And then Luke does neglect this, fleeing to Egypt. He doesn't include it. Just means one account completes the other. That's what we're saying. Same thing with like different accounts of the resurrection. They each complete each other. So yes, Mick.
So along those lines, right where you're at right now,
Mhm.
what's the timeline of that?
Yeah, he's still a child. Yeah.
Right, I know, but the Magi show up,
Hmm.
and like all the pictures are Christmas, he's in the manger, like, because they didn't have room for him at the inn. Like,
Correct.
How can that be 2 years later and they're still in the barn with the animals, and the baby's in swaddling clothes in a manger?
Well, they
The priests show up.
R- right when the Magi show up. Yeah, I mean, sorry to put it very bluntly, when you're poor, you're poor, right? You can still use a manger, even if you have a little dwelling or some sort of house. That's his crib, basically, is what we're getting at there. You know what I'm saying?
I guess, like, in my mind, I always completed the thought of,
Yes.
they didn't have room for him at the inn, so
That-
he was born in the
Manger, right?
and the Magi showed up in the barn. Like, that's not.
Well, I don't know if you want to go to the account where the Magi are, that is in Matthew. That doesn't necessarily say. The pictures show it. That's great, but not necessarily accurate. But he could have been in. I don't know what else they would make for a crib back in the day, whatever the case may be. Yes, Joseph was some sort of handyman, right? Yeah, so he could have made something. I don't believe it says that he was necessarily in a manger from the Magi. We can take a look if you want.
You did say though a couple weeks ago that it was almost to 2 years when the Magi actually came.
Yeah,
to
it's
Egypt. So
possibly.
It could have been possibly 2 years.
Right. There is that gap. Yeah.
I guess I'm like in my head it all happened. At
No,
the same
but
time.
that's the problem. Yeah, that we read the angels in the morning, the paramon, and then we read the magi for the feast. So it can cause confusion.
Yes.
Yes, but we need to separate that out a little bit and consider that the timeline allows for a gap of up to 2 years, where he could have been in some sort of dwelling. Also, the picture, he could have still been in some sort of poor, makeshift, crib that is very similar to a manger. We don't. Let me go back at least. We're gonna probably have to go to the Gospels here, if we can do that. Nope. Home, Bible, and we're gonna go to Matthew. Yeah, that's the trick. Is basically yes, the readings kind of push you in a direction, and the story, the pictures also push you in the same direction. But no, sift, like separate, examine the facts. It's not necessarily that everything occurred at the same time. The Magi have possibly come a while later. Okay, here we go. So when they actually go to him, go and search carefully. If there's a house all of a sudden here, right? Verse 11. When they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, fell down. Yeah, there's no mention of a manger actually with the Magi here. So now, yes, it's very nice the pictures that we see and everything, but no, you don't have to necessarily follow those pictures per se, right? That account isn't accurate. This is accurate. That's what I'm trying to say. Or more, this is telling us more information than somebody who just mashed the things together. I hope that's clear. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'll get to the fun announcement while we're here. We're going to try to name this meeting. We're going to try to do something like that. And you guys will be involved. Can I do this? Boy. Okay, I'm just going to go right to it. So we have 2 suggestions so far. We have something called a koinonia corner. Koinonia, that's already a confusing situation. Koinonia means kind of like a communion. It originates probably in our church from Saint Pachomius. He was the father of Koinonian monasticism. So that's when he was like in the army. So he basically like copied the army rules for the monks. There would be like two monks living in a room with like bunk beds. It was very, military like. But the idea was they did everything together. They prayed together. They worked together. They, like they were in communion. They were like literally like, a very military style, two guys in the bunk beds or whatever. So this is one suggestion for this meeting. Another one, actually, Lexi probably knows about it already. The real, like trying to indicate fishers of men, something like that. That works too. We had another one. Okay, anyway, the important thing is I don't have all the names in front of me now. We're going to send out you can, send me a message, whatever, however you can get me the information of your suggestions. And then we'll send out a form with like, whatever. Hopefully there's not a billion different suggestions. And then we'll send out like, the top 4 or 5. And then the church can just vote on it, and then whichever one is you guys want, that'll be the name of this meeting at this stage, okay? Amir helped with the design. I know Maggie's good at it as well, so we'll see which who can help with the design work and stuff like that. But just introducing the idea, and then like I said, you can reach out and just let us know what you guys come up with any clever names. Yes.
I would like to have clear what kind of suggestion about what.
The name of the meeting. The name.
The name.
عاوزين نسمي دي. We want to name this. This meeting. Yes. So like what they have in DC, it's the Well, right? Something like that. I think they have a Koinonia in like Philadelphia. I don't know if it's a meeting or whatever. Yeah, but we're not gonna copy them. We're gonna go Koinonia Corner or Koinonia Cafe if we want to drink coffee. However the case may be. But we want to name this, and then they'll participate, the whole congregation, if they have suggestions, and then we'll send out a form. And whatever one is the top one, that's it. We'll just make it the name. Okay? Any other questions? No? Okay. Glory be unto our God, now unto the ages of ages. Amen. So somebody will pray for us and we will close.
And they get the map again.
Sure. But for Egypt?
Yes.
Okay. Hold on. Should we sit down?